to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to Jesus, and the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable. "Which one of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? When he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost.' Just so, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. Or what woman, having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? When she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost.' Just so, I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
You may be seated. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. These are the lyrics in the hymn we heard earlier today. I can't even tell you how many times I've sung those famous lines from John Newton's Amazing Grace. Most of us learned this song when we were little and still find the assured language moving and beautiful. It is sung at church, at camp, at hospitals, and funerals. It's a song we sing when we're joyful and a song when we're doubting. It is a song of comfort. While I was sick and laying on the couch with COVID, I finally had the chance to watch all the movies I didn't have time for before. I finally had the chance to watch the movie Respect, starring Jennifer Hudson, and it was about the life and music of the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. It's on HBO if you'd like to watch it. The movie shows the hard life that Aretha had. Teen pregnancy at the hands of rape by one of her father's friends, a controlling father, which leads to a series of controlling men that she then marries. This amazing voice that others seek to control for their own success. At the end of the movie, Aretha had just hit rock bottom as she struggles with alcoholism, fame, and success. She's pushed away all of her loved ones. But it is in this lostness that she finds herself again, finds who she really is singing for. And so she produces a gospel album, an album her producer said would never sell. But in fact, it became the biggest selling album as well as the top grossing gospel collection of all time. And Amazing Grace is found on that album. The movie concludes at this powerful moment of Aretha's comeback. The credits roll, the captions about the rest of her life successes scroll by on the screen, and real pictures of the Queen of Soul scroll by. But the thing is, life is not a movie, ending in a very inspirational way. And the thing that I found so powerful about Aretha Franklin's story was that her life did not fit into this before and after story that was depicted, especially when it came to faith. I once was lost, but now I'm found. And I found a connection with Aretha's story, with this struggle with God. Because the truth is, my own lostness isn't over. Lostness remains a central feature in my relationship with God. And if we pay attention to our gospel reading this week, this is exactly as it should be. So Luke sets the scene. Jesus is in trouble once again for hanging out with all the wrong people. As all the tax collectors and sinners come near to listen to him, the Pharisees and the scribes begin to grumble. This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them. In response, Jesus tells the scandalized religious insiders 2 parables. In the first, the shepherd leaves his flock of 99 to look for the single lamb that is lost. He searches until he finds it, and when he does, he carries that lamb over his shoulders and invites his friends and neighbors and throws a party. And then in the second, a woman loses one of her 10 silver coins, and immediately she lights a lamp, sweeps her entire house, looking carefully for the coin until she finds it. Then, like the shepherd, she calls together her friends and her neighbors and asks them to celebrate the recovery of the coin. Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost. The first thing that strikes me about these parables is how many years I spent misreading them. For a long time, I thought that the lost lamb and the lost coin represented sinners out there beyond the fold, beyond the church, beyond Christianity, those who lost sight of God. But no, the lost lamb in the first parable belongs to the shepherd's flock from the very beginning of the story. It is his lamb. And the same goes for the coin in the second parable, belongs to the woman before she loses it. The coin is one of her very own. These parables are not about lost outsiders finding salvation and becoming Christians. These parables are about us, the insiders, the churchgoers, the bread and wine consumers, the Bible readers. It's about us. It's about lostness on the inside. What does this mean? Well, it means that lostness isn't an experience exclusive to non or not yet Christians. Lostness happens to God's people. It happens within the beloved community. It's not that we cross over once and for all from a sinful lostness to a righteous foundness. We get lost over and over and over again, and God finds us over and over and over again. Lostness is not a bad thing or something that we shouldn't talk about. It's part of the life of faith. And while I watched the Aretha Franklin movie, I watched what it meant to be lost, to lose your sense of belonging, to lose your capacity to trust, to lose how you feel God's presence and even the will to persevere. The movie was a mirror to those times in my own life when I have felt those same things. Not to the same degree, but I felt it at the times that I least expected it. And it's different at different times of our lives, but it's never one and done. Lostness will happen many times in our lives. Some of us get lost when sickness descends on our lives and God's goodness starts to not look so good. Some of us get lost when death comes too soon and too suddenly for someone we love, and we experience a crisis of faith that leaves us reeling. Some of us get lost when our marriages die and our relationships fall apart. Some of us get lost when our children break our hearts. Some of us get lost in the throes of addiction or anxiety or lust or unforgiveness or hatred or bitterness. Some of us get lost very close to home, within the very walls of the church. We get lost when prayer feels hollow and when the scriptures we once loved die on the page. when the table of bread and wine that once nourished us now leaves us hungry, cranky, bewildered, or bored. We get lost. We get so miserably lost that the shepherd has to wander through the wilderness to find us. We get so wholly lost that the housewife has to light her lamp, pick up her broom, and sweep out every nook and cranny of her house to discover what's become of us. Notice that the searching in these parables is not a show. The shepherd isn't just pretending to look for the lost sheep. The woman isn't just putting on an act with her lamp and her broom. What's lost is really, truly lost, even though the seeker is God. Our God is a God who experiences authentic, real-time loss. And God searches for us. God pursues us. God lingers and wanders over hills and valleys looking for his lost lamb. God turns the house upside down looking for her lost coin. And when God finally finds what God is looking for, God's joy is not contained within the walls. It wells up. And so God throws a party and invites the whole neighborhood to celebrate that what was lost is now found. I once was lost, but now I'm found. It's not usually how we imagine God, is it? Kind of hard to fathom. That God searches so deeply for us every time we get lost, every time we wander off. It doesn't feel like it could be true because the rest of our world is so transactional that we believe that we become so lost to everyone else that it must be true for God too. And I think that's what's scandalous about the parables is not that we still get lost. What's scandalous is what they reveal about the nature of God. God, the searcher. God, the seeker. God, the determined, dogged finder. That if Jesus' parables are true, then God doesn't hang out where I assume that God does. God isn't chilling with the other 99. God isn't curled up on the couch polishing the 9 coins and relaxing on her day off. God is where the lost things are. God's in the bleakness in the wilderness. God is in the remotest corners of the house where the cobwebs live. God is where the search is at its finest. Meaning, if I want to find God, I have to seek the lost. I have to get lost. I have to leave the safety of the inside and venture out. I have to recognize my own lostness and consent to be found. This isn't easy, not by a long shot. For one thing, it's so hard for me to believe that I'm worth looking for, that I'm not expendable, that I'm loved enough and desired enough to warrant a long, hard, and diligent search. It's so hard to trust that God won't give up on me. That God does God's best work when I'm utterly lost and unable to find myself. In her book, An Altar in the World, Barbara Brown Taylor argues that lostness makes us stronger at the edges and softer at the center. Lostness teaches us about vulnerability, about empathy, about humility, and about patience. Lostness shows us who we really are and who God really is. So who are you? Are you ready to get lost this year? Our world is a mess, and many of us are hanging on by just a thread. But if there's one place we know God finds us is in community, in the waters of baptism, in the bread and wine of communion. So I ask you to take a risk and get lost within this community this year. Really dig into the stuff of our souls together. And we're doing this at Sunday school and confirmation, Bible studies and youth group. We'll do this sitting around the Wednesday night food table. Take a risk. Dive into something new this year, not knowing who you'll be on the other side. Get lost with us. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. This grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. God finds us. God looks for us when our lostness is so profound we can't even pretend to look for God. God finds us. That is the good news. This is amazing grace, and it is ours. Amen.
amazing grace.